Good morning, everyone. My name is Lindsay Jessup, and I'm one of the regional ombudsmen that will be moderating our live question and answer portion of Voices. We hope you've been enjoying the forum so far. There has been a lot of wonderful and useful information shared. And just to point you to our live Q&A chat box, you can put your questions in the chat box, but don't forget to refer to some of the links that have been posted. You can find all relevant information on our dedicated Voices website, and the link is in the chat box. And please don't forget to fill out the Post Voices survey. We want your feedback so we can make any future virtual events better for you as a viewer. So we're going to jump right to it. I'd like to welcome our esteemed panel today. We have Mairead Painter, our state ombudsman.
Good morning.
Thank you, Mairead, for being here. We have Barbara Cass, the branch chief from the Department of Public Health, and our Karen Rosenwald award winner this year.
Morning, everyone.
We have Erin Leavitt-Smith from the Department of Mental Health and Addiction Services. And we have Dr. Sheri Gibson, our keynote speaker.
Hi.
Good morning, Sheri, Dr. Gibson. And hopefully we will have Jeanette Sullivan-Martinez, our executive board president, also on the live Q&A. So the first question that came through the live event Q&A came from...
Before we start, I'm going to jump in. Sorry about that. There is something I want to take a moment. I want to thank everybody for everything that they've done, our entire regional ombudsman team, Dan and Dan. But before we move forward today, I just wanted to take a moment. I know that across the country today, long-term care communities are taking a moment, and I just wanted to take a quick moment of silence. The long-term care community here in Connecticut and across our country is like a family. And as a community, we've suffered the loss of residents, peers, loved ones, and care team members. And this is just heartbreaking. This pandemic has been devastating to residents, not only in our state, but as I said, across the country. This virus has a unique ability to impact all of us in ways we never thought possible. But to no one more than our long-term care residents, family members who have had to be restricted from visiting, and our heroic caregivers who continue to put themselves on the front line and do whatever possible to provide high quality care. For everyone impacted and for the lives that have been lost during this pandemic, we'd like to take a moment of silence in their honor and to remember them. Thank you all so much. I'm very excited to move into the questions today, and we do want to hear from all of you. We hope to be able to answer some of the questions that you've had and talk about some of the impact that this has had on you, and see if there's ways we can help you resolve some of these issues and come to some point of feeling like there's some next steps we can take. Again, I want to really thank everybody on my team that helped put this together. I know how hard you all worked, as well as Dr. Sheri Gibson, DEMAS, Department of Mental Health and Addiction Services, who are wonderful partners and part of our sister agencies. And I don't know that there's anyone we've worked more with than our Department of Public Health and Barbara Cass through this. So thank you all for being here, and I look forward to being able to answer some of the questions this morning. Go ahead, Lindsay, sorry.
No, thank you for that, Mairead. That moment of silence was beautiful, and we would be remiss if we didn't do that. So the first question came through from the chat box, and I am going to publish it. It is a question about compassionate care visits. And the question is, can my doctor order a compassionate care visit for me?
Barbara, do you want to jump in?
Sure, thank you. Thank you for that question. And again, I would be remiss, Mairead, if I didn't take 1 minute to really express my incredible gratitude to this group. This acknowledgement that you've given to me is a privilege, and it's a privilege that we get to serve you each and every day. So thank you, thank you, thank you. And I just wanted to also piggyback on the summit's Telegram messaging and the song that we are family, and we are a family. And I want you all to know that your voices are loud. So it was in perfect alignment with the theme for this year's conference. And our voices are louder. And this year they are louder. So I want to encourage everyone, and I'm going to piggyback on the summit's Telegram. I want everyone to get up, everybody, and sing loudly. So thank you. So compassionate care visits. Compassionate care visits are, it is helpful if they are ordered by a physician. One thing we are expecting, each and every nursing home develop a visitation plan for each and every individual that lives in a nursing home. It needs to be person-centered, and it needs to be all about you. Not about Barbara, not about Susan, not about the regulator who comes in. It needs to be about you. And if the assessment that's been done and the physician order indicates that a compassionate care visit is necessary, then that should be honored. CMS has issued guidance on September 17th that does help instruct visitation. It's helping the Department of Public Health as we move forward in looking at how facilities are operationalizing visitation. This has been a very, very difficult time for families and residents. And that gap has not been lost on us. We recognize how important and acknowledge how important it is to reunite families while we have the opportunity. So again, a compassionate care visit can be ordered by the physician, but it is not necessary. A nursing home at the assessment level and determine that a compassionate care visit is necessary. So I'll pause there.
Lindsay, do you have other questions for us?
Great, thank you, Barbara. We do. So one of the next questions is, what can I do to help a fellow resident who is having a difficult time with the isolation and lack of connection?
Okay, and we've talked a little bit about this. One of the things that our state did, Department of Public Health very proactively on Mother's Day, got iPads out to each of the nursing homes. One of the ways you can stay connected is to ask your rec department to connect you via FaceTime and have a few residents connect through the iPad within the home. You can connect to outside games, maybe a trivia game with peers all together on the iPad. We've heard of some homes rolling residents towards the door and doing a unit sing-along, which I thought was an incredibly good idea, or unit bingo, where people are safe sitting inside their doorways but able to hear the numbers being called out and feeling that sense of participation in something together. So I think we are having to think about doing things in a different way, but it also offers some opportunities. Linking up with maybe a local school, and if you can, again, use the FaceTime and use the iPads to connect with a young adult. I know that people across the age span are struggling with some of this isolation, and maybe there's something that you can share with them, your unique perspective or stories. So I would say, really, we have to use technology. We're using technology in different ways, just like we are this morning, but we're finding ways to make it work, and we're being as creative as possible.
Thank you. And Dr. Gibson, do you have anything to add to that question in terms of connecting this and helping residents overcome feelings of isolation?
Yeah, thank you so much. And I also want to just reflect my appreciation to the state long-term care ombudsman of Connecticut. All of you have been just so helpful, and working with Dan and Patricia and Lindsay and Mairead. Thank you so much for this opportunity to be with you today. I really was so touched by the individual videos that were provided from across your state from residents. And what I heard there were sentiments of connection. And I think what's interesting in this time is that in working in long-term care, it's a high-touch field that we're in. And we've had to become high tech, as Mairead pointed out. We've had to embrace technology in ways that none of us could ever have fathomed. And I think that there are some other ways that certainly residents can stay connected. Some of that may be just the way that we ask questions of one another. Exploring and being curious about each other's lives, because we all come into this time right now with an accumulative wisdom, if you will, and experiences. And so one of the questions that I find can generate connectivity and discussion is, wow, you've probably been through a lot of hardships in your life. What got you through those hardships? What were your positions of strength? What were the things that you leaned on? Or tell me about a time where you really overcame some kind of adversity. Sometimes when we can draw on the strengths of how we've come this far in our lives, and certainly with residents who come into long-term care communities with a lifetime of experiences, have so much wisdom to share. And if we could become curious about each other and just asking those kinds of questions, I think is really important. The other thing that can be helpful is passing around a jar and having people write down like statements of hope or their own questions that they want to know. And then every day people get to pull from that jar and ask a question, or they can read a statement of hope. And so that brings a sense of community into a long-term care community that brings people together. They could also put in a jar like maybe a statement about themselves that most people wouldn't know. And then somebody pulls that fun fact out about that person, and then everybody has to guess who in the community would that person have been. And that really shows the diversity of experiences and lifetimes there in a community. And those are some kind of fun ideas, I think, but also very meaningful ways to build connection.
Thank you, Dr. Gibson. Those were wonderful ideas for our residents and homes to get started with. Mm-hmm. The next question is for Erin, and it involves the coach program, and it says, if I contact the coach program, what would services look like for me as someone who lives in a nursing home?
Great question. Thank you. And thank you for having me here. The coach program is a very short-term touch for people. And what we're trying to do is reach out to anyone who's been negatively impacted by COVID, which is just about everybody. And so what the resident in a nursing home could expect is outreach from our coaches across the state. And what they will do is they will reach out several times to a group. It can be a group touch, it could be an individual contact. And what they're going to do is they're going to really work with you around resilience and helping you with skills to get through the next several months. And then really connect to longer term services if that's what's felt is needed. So it's not a one size fits all, it's very individualized. And that coach will really help work with people, again, in groups or individually, to figure out the length of time and certainly longer term services that might be needed. And they have an array of tools in their toolkit, so to speak, as to what services are out there. I know there are certain programs where people can get phone calls once a week for a long-term on a long-term basis, just to touch base with people that are feeling isolated and alone. And the coaches know where all those resources are, and certainly will assist people in connecting to those resources, so that once the coach gives you those tools, that you still have people that are involved with you on a long-term basis, if that's what you want.
Great, that sounds wonderful, Erin. And I hope that residents take the opportunity to tap into that program, because it is so individualized to that person. And there are, Demas put together wonderful resources on the coach program, and you will find that on our Dedicated Voices website, how to get in touch, who the coaches are throughout the state. So please refer to our website, which has been posted in the chat, and we'll be sure to add that again. So the next question is coming from the Q&A chat box, and it surrounds, can I visit my friends on different floors? And that pertains to when the building has a positive staff member, someone who's tested positive for COVID-19, and not being residents not being able to leave the floor at that time and see other friends on different floors in the home.
I think that's a Barbara question.
Okay. So lots of moving parts with that question. So is the person who wants to visit living on a floor where there isn't any incidence of COVID? So what we refer to at DPH, the negative cohort, and wants to visit someone who is in a exposed asymptomatic, and I know I'm talking medical terms right now, and I apologize. So we refer to exposures or cohorts in nursing homes as a control measure to keep people safe. So in the last 6 or 7 months, we have asked individuals to move out of their room and maybe to another unit or another room. And that's a control measure to maintain some level of safety. So there's a negative cohort, which is comprised or people who are living together who have not had any exposure to the virus. There's another cohort or cluster of people living together who may have been exposed and are not demonstrating any symptoms of the infection. And then there are individuals living together who may have tested positive and or are showing symptoms. So as a control measure, we are not encouraging, suggesting, and strongly discouraging that someone who is living on a negative or in a negative cluster visit one of their friends who may be living in a positive cluster. And we know that this is very, very difficult, but it's a control measure or a recommendation, a strong recommendation that we're making to keep people safe. And we have had to make some strong recommendations over the last 7 months that have been very difficult and have impacted not only your relationships and interactions with your family, but with your family at the local level that live in the nursing home. And this has been an incredible sacrifice for all of you. But the recommendations come from a really good place so that we can further protect you. So I think I'm answering the question, Lindsay. The answer, as I hear the question, is we would not recommend that. Certainly, it would not be in your best interest to keep you safe, even with the appropriate level of PPE. Now, if it was a compassionate care visit and it was assessed as a need, we might be having, and I want to italicize, underscore the word might be having a different discussion, because I know that many of your friends at the local level, at the nursing home level, are your family. But we always embrace those conversations at DPH when we can have those discussions. I want you to know that the Long-Term Care Ombudsman Program, every single day, 7 days a week, is advocating for you and for those visits. So unfortunately for Mairead, she is on speed dial with me. And we talk all week long and all hours of the day. So please know that in those individual situations, we are having discussions about it. I'm reluctant to paint with this broad brush that yes or no, because there may be some nuances, but going from one cluster to another cluster is not a recommended control measure. And it's so hard for me to have to say that, because I know how important those relationships are.
Thank you,
Thank
Barbara.
you, Lindsay.
Thank you, Barbara. Wonderful answer, and it's so nice to hear that the health department has the residents' rights always at the forefront, and they're always considering the individualized needs of residents while maintaining their welfare and safety as well. The next question, it also might be for Barbara and for Mairead. It sounds like it's coming from a resident council president, and the question is, hello. I guess my concern as an advocate for both staff and residents, as well as the president of my resident council, is that I see many underhanded things happening. And as much as DPH and my region's ombudsman has been incredibly helpful, I feel as though the company that runs my nursing home always finds ways to get away with illegal and negligent activity because they cover it up when the state officials come into the building. Do you have any advice for that person as to what they can do?
Yes, so this has been coming up. And the one thing I want to caution is that we have over 200 nursing homes in Connecticut. And I'm incredibly thankful that the majority of these homes are trying incredibly hard and have been working with every breath they take to keep COVID out of their home, to keep their residents and their care team members safe. However, we do understand that there are some homes that have not been taking all of those steps in the way that we would feel is appropriate, and that there are concerns. They have been brought to our attention, and what we really ask of residents, staff are all mandated reporters, but for residents who have concerns, some have been worried about bringing concerns to our attention due to fear of retaliation. I would say it's always safe to talk to us. We are a confidential program and we are not mandated reporters. However, we're going to work with you to get all of the information possible to see if there's a way that we can bring those concerns forward while protecting you. It's really important that when something's happening, we have the date, the time, who was involved, what was said, and how it impacted residents at large, whether it be one resident or many residents. Sometimes if we wait a day or two, a week, some of those details become less clear, and it's more challenging for us when we do file a complaint on your behalf, if that's what we're asked to do, to convey that information to the Department of Public Health. Then when DPH goes out, it is equally as challenging for them to be able to verify those things. So whenever possible, if we can get as much information as possible in that detailed way, it really helps us hold that level of accountability. Barbara, I don't know if you have anything you want to add to that.
I think I would just underscore the value of your comments, Mairead. Reporting as soon as possible, whether it's to the long-term care ombudsman program or to DPH, is critical because the details are fresh in your mind. And if there is a concern with regulatory compliance, then it is numbered as an investigation and triaged as such. So I think your comments were very, very valuable. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. The next question is for the panel, and hopefully a few of you can join in. But the question is, how would I know if my care plan is person-centered? What are things that I could look for?
Well, we love a good care plan question.
Yeah.
Who else is on there? Somebody else was going to jump in. Go for it.
Can you guys hear me? It's Jeanette.
Oh, yay. Yes, Jeanette, please jump in on that.
I would say basically is for them to, talk to their nurse or when they have their quarterly meeting to make sure that they address those questions. You know, they have the right to go up and ask the nurse, you know, what medications do I take? Why do I take them? You know, those different health issues or concerns they have. They can set up a time to talk to their social worker and their team to see what other adjustments need to be made. That would be my suggestion. Talk to the right people and set up a meeting so that they can understand what a care plan is and how it functions.
That's great advice, Jeanette. You're absolutely right. And one of the things I'm always concerned about is I want to make sure that residents and people that they feel are important to their care attend their care plan meetings. Your care plan meetings should be happening at least every 90 days. So that's at least. Sometimes they happen more often if there's something going on for you. But attending those meetings and really listening to what's addressed and what's identified as your goals. The goals, when we're talking about person-centered, the goals addressed in your plan of care should be goals that you find meaningful to you. I think that also helps during this challenging period of time. What is important to you? Where are some of the gaps in what's happening? And what could be done to mitigate some of that impact and some of those risks? So, for instance, if you're having challenges related to social interaction or connecting to loved ones, what can be done to reach that goal of staying connected? And what interventions or what steps can be put in place to help reduce the risks of not meeting that goal? Other goals be medically related, as Jeanette brought up. Some might be related to medication. And asking, okay, you said I'm on 4 different medications. What are they for? And what goal are they helping me reach? Right? So I know some individuals take medication if they have difficulty sleeping. Well, getting a good night's rest might be very important to them, but they also might be at risk for falls and worried about that. So you might want to have a conversation and say, I understand I'm on a sleeping medication. However, I sometimes have to get up and use the bathroom at night and it makes me unsteady. I have another goal of not falling. Is there a way I can talk to my doctor? Is there a different medication? Can a team member that provides me with care come in every night at 1:30? I know I get up at the same time every night. Can somebody come in at the same time and offer me support so that I can reach that goal of not falling while still ensuring that I get a good night's sleep? So that's what we're talking about, individualized, person-centered. The plan should be about you, it should sound like you, and it should make sense to you.
Yeah, and it can be simple as asking a question. This is my issue, how can you help me? Just like that.
And I want to make sure that residents are seeing, like you just pointed out, Jeanette, an issue. We want to encourage people not to see their care as issues, that they're their personal goals, and that we all have goals in our life. And even in a long-term care setting, we want every resident to have meaningful goals of living their best high quality life. So if you approach it in that way, I think you'll have an opportunity to find success. And what I've heard from caregivers is when residents present their care needs in that way, it helps caregivers identify with the resident, it helps them problem solve with the resident, and we tend to hear about better care outcomes.
Yes, that's great.
Thank you, Mairead and Jeanette. Dr. Gibson, do you have any other ideas that you'd like to add?
Yeah, I was just thinking and listening to all of you. I think that the care plan should be an ongoing conversation, that it's always evolving. And so what a person's goals might have been, I want to make sure I'm not on mute. Okay, I'm not. Okay. What a person's goals may have been, say, even 8 months ago before COVID, may have changed at this time. And so I think what Mairead has said about, encouraging and empowering residents to attend their care plan meetings is really important, but also to know that the care plan is an evolving live document, if you will, that it's always happening. And so empowering people to continue to have discussions around their goals, and knowing that, just like all of us throughout our lives, our values and preferences have changed. My values when I was in my 20s and 30s are very different for me now in my 50s. And so why that would be any different as we transition and live in a long-term care setting would be remiss. That, my aspirations and my goals may have changed even pre-COVID, and now that's different. So I just think, really kind of driving home the point that the care plan is an evolution, and that it can change, and it's not just this point in time where you attend a conference. It should be an ongoing conversation with your providers, with the staff, and with people who are advocating also for you, but also being empowered in your own voice to state what you need and what's changed for you, if that has changed, so that people can provide the best support and care as time goes on.
That's fantastic advice. Thank you.
Yeah,
That was very good advice, and an excellent suggestion that it's a working document and something that can always be revisited at any time should the resident want to discuss those things.
Right.
The next question is to do with the new visitation orders. And the question is, do visitors need to be tested before having indoor visits?
So I will start a little bit, and then I'm going to pop that over to Barbara. This has come up a lot in the past 2 days. And the one thing I want to say from our office is, we know that it has been incredibly challenging to find a balance between residents' rights, visitation, and support, that emotional and social support, but also infection control measures, and that this has been incredibly hard on all of you and your loved ones. And we've heard from many of them. We've also heard how concerned they are about you all being protected, as are the care teams at your homes. And so we have heard, and we acknowledge that many homes are requesting that testing take place prior to a visit. In the guidance from CMS, it can be suggested. It's a strong suggestion. I strongly suggest it. There is not a current requirement. Yesterday, I had the opportunity to talk with Evan Schulman from CMS, and we discussed this with him, and we discussed our team members being tested prior to going in. And although it's not a requirement, I feel it's incredibly important that I and all of my team members continue to test weekly and do our best to ensure that we're entering the building knowing to the best of our ability that it's as safe as possible. And I think that that's where this question is coming from nursing homes when they're asking it. And it is with the best intention of keeping you all safe. We understand that for some individuals in some situations, it's a challenging request, and some of the ways that it can be addressed, we'd like to work with you on that. But we feel it is a strong suggestion, it is a strong request, and if there's issues or challenges related to it, we'd like to help to facilitate some of the the ways to address it. Barbara?
I would echo your comments, Ruth. The CMS guidance document does recommend testing for visitors. Every nursing home in the state does have use of the antigen instrument, and there's also the suggestion that this is a good tool to use as the visitation policies and plans are implemented. There are lots of moving parts related to this question. And in so much as hotspots, county incidents, municipal incidents, should or does visitation policies change based on that? And does use of the instrument or testing change based on that? So we have lots of questions still at the Department of Public Health on this. So we did send an email yesterday to CMS to answer some of those questions so that we're giving the best answers. The guidance document is an incredible tool for us all to use as we talk about visitation, but there are certain nuances that we would like to have clarity on. And again, visitor testing is one of those issues that we would like to work out with CMS in a more granular level. So more to come on that, but the guidance in the document, the CMS document, is testing is recommended.
Thank you, Barbara, and thank you, Mairead. And if you, again, go to our website for the Voices Forum, you will see the CMS guidance that Barbara was referring to. There is a link there. It's a 7-page document that you can read through, and it really does spell out all of the core principles when it concerning visitation. The next question, again, obviously the pandemic is on a lot of people's minds. The question is, what if there are only staff positives and no resident positives in the home? What is the impact to the resident?
I'm going to give that one to Barbara Cass.
And I'm going to ask you to repeat it, please, Lindsay. I did get a little distraction.
Sure. If in a home there are only staff who are testing positive, but no residents testing positive, what is the impact to the resident?
So we, as you all may be aware, we do have a very robust testing strategy in Connecticut. And the state is providing incredible support so that we can ensure that our testing strategy does continue. PPE is an incredible control measure in terms of infection control. We do expect every single staff person to wear the appropriate level of PPE that is needed for that particular cluster. And I mentioned the clusters or the cohorts earlier. We are watching this incredibly close. We are starting to see a few facilities that fortunately, and I shouldn't say fortunately, but we are seeing some facilities that are having some staff positivity. But the good thing we want to celebrate is we are not seeing resident positivity, which demonstrates to us that the control measures are working. We have our eyes and visibility on this every single day because facilities are required to report into a DPH portal. So that site is being monitored by many different people at DPH for their expertise and their role in the pandemic. So I'm not sure I answered the question in totality, but we worry when we have staff positivity. As soon as we have staff positivity, we at the department reach out to the facility and we talk about what they are doing in terms of their cohorting or clustering. We talk about what has been the response to that staff positivity. We want to have assurances, of course, that that staff member has been taken off the schedule. We expect them to do contact tracing so that they can understand better the connections that that individual may have had to the resident population and the scope of that contact. And then we watch incredibly close to see if there is any resident positivity as a result of that staff positivity. Last, we do a weekly call with our nursing home industry and provide updates and training. And last week we celebrated a provider that has had 3 different incidents of staff positivity, and in all 3 incidents, there was no resident positivity. So that is what we celebrate, because again, the core principles of infection control that are being utilized on the ground are working.
Yep.
Barbara, what would the residents expect to experience if there's a staff positive? Does that impact visitation, recreation? What would be the impact that they might feel or observe?
So it depends on the number of staff positivity, the location of the incidents. So if it's localized to one unit, well, first, if there is an incident, indoor visitation would stop. Outdoor visitation, perimeter visits, FaceTime still continues. But if there is a new onset of an outbreak, indoor visitation does stop. And I know that's incredibly harsh, but it's also incredibly important that we protect everyone in the building. There may be...
Just ask one question there, Barbara. For an
Yes.
outbreak, I think that some of the residents, when we've been talking with them, have been surprised. We've been trying to, I'm learning, she always says she learns from the epidemiologist, and I learn from all of them, that an outbreak is one case, right? One case
That's
means
correct.
there's an outbreak in the building. It doesn't have to be incredibly widespread. That one case is considered an outbreak, and that's why when people hear there's an outbreak, sometimes they get very alarmed, but it can be one case, but you're responding in a very assertive way to ensure safety, correct?
That's correct. You've been a good student. And again, it's important to say a new onset, because we do know that residents may be coming from the hospital and with a history of COVID. That's not a new onset. So it has to be a new onset at the facility level, one case. And it could be one case of staff or one case of a resident that indicates an outbreak. And then at your neighborhood or your unit level, there might be some changes as well. You may see some resident movement. You may see some room changes, depending on the level of exposure to to individuals who may have had or may be exposed to an individual who was positive. So there's not a checklist that says 1, 2, 3, 4 things will happen. They're individually nuanced as it relates to the individual who's affected and what kind of a cohort or cluster that may have been affected as well.
Thank you, Barbara and Mairead. And it's just so nice. I know that you talk a lot about this at the facility level weekly, and I'm sure more to particular facilities on a personal level. But it's just nice for the residents here today to be also be able to hear this information, because it's so important to understand the whys. And I think you're doing a great job at explaining why there are certain protocol in place. So this is a question to the panel. I have been feeling isolated and down. What can I do to help myself? And what can I expect my interdisciplinary team to do to help me as well?
Dr. Gibson, I don't know if you're able to start that one.
Sure, I'd love to. Well, first of all, I want to thank this person for speaking what I think many residents also feel. And I think it's important that during this time that we voice those difficulties because there are people who might not be voicing that. And when we can talk about it openly, that's where we can feel connected again. And so feeling down right now is a normal reaction. But what do you do with it? And so you want to think about ways that you can connect to something more meaningful in your life. Certainly, if you're feeling down to the point that you're kind of questioning the meaning of life, you're questioning your own life, you want to first reach out to a staff member that you trust in your facility, and perhaps see if they can connect you with a mental health professional. You heard a very wonderful presentation today about some crisis interventions that are taking place in your state that are offering mental health services to residents. And so that might be the first step. If you're really feeling like you can't get out of bed because you feel so down, or maybe you have a loss of appetite, or you're unable to sleep, or you're having some ruminative thoughts all the time about your situation or the world, then that's a time that should be an indicator to you to reach out and ask for some additional support by talking to a mental health professional. So I want to start there for sure. And those people, like myself as a psychologist, are specialized in helping you and giving you some tools, or just being a listening ear, because sometimes what all a person needs is just to talk about those deep feelings, those difficult emotions that are stirring inside of you. But one of the other things that you might want to consider doing, I use an acronym with a lot of my clients, and the acronym is FACE, F-A-C-E. And I'm just going to run through this very quickly if the panel doesn't mind, because I think it's been incredibly helpful. This is not something that I created, but was created by another psychologist in the field. His name is Dr. Russell Henry. Oh my gosh, I can't believe sorry. I can provide it later if you need, but anyway, so the acronym FACE stands for F, focus on what's in your control. And that's really important right now, because right at this moment, everything feels out of our control. The regulations, the pandemic itself, I mean, we are faced with an invisible assailant, if you will. And so everything that's happening in our lives can feel like we're not in control. So focus on the thing that is in your control. The A stands for acknowledge your feelings and your thoughts, because the thing that we can't control are the feelings and thoughts that come in. We can control our behavior, but what happens is when we don't acknowledge those difficult feelings or those thoughts, then we suppress them. And what happens is when we suppress those feelings and thoughts, they will pop up in the most benign situations, or they'll come upon us with no warning signal. And then, I don't know about you, but I have found there are times that I'll be driving in my car, or I'll just be sitting at my desk, and I'll have this overwhelming feeling of sadness. I might even start crying for what feels like no reason, although I will say I'm in menopause, so I'm sure that has something to do with it. But they pop up, and unless we acknowledge it and we sit with it, then those will come up in the weirdest situations. So you want to just acknowledge it to yourself, silently say to yourself, wow, there's sadness again, or there's my anxiety, or I'm having the thought that I'm worried about getting sick, or I'm worried about when will I ever be able to hug my grandchild again, or touch my daughter's hand. Just acknowledge the thought. And then the C stands for come back into your body, because what we know is that through movement, through awareness of our bodies, we can kind of get out of our heads. And so some tips that I give to people, one of the best ways, and I mentioned this in my presentation earlier today, is deep breathing, taking a slow, deep inhale and exhaling. Also noticing where you are in your body, noticing if you're holding tension in your shoulders, and you might just scrunch your shoulders up and then let it go, or pressing your fingers together, driving your heels of your feet into the ground, and just coming back into your body in a way that signifies that you're right here, right now. And then E, once you've done those things, once you've focused on what's in your control, once you have acknowledged the feeling or the thought that you're having, you've moved through your body, then you can engage fully in an activity. So pick up something that can distract your mind a little bit. It's not that I'm asking you to avoid anything. I don't want you to avoid the feelings. I want you to re-engage in something that's meaningful. And engagement is such an interesting word that we use in long-term care because engagement is very individualized. What I find engaging is going to be different than what you find engaging. And engagement can mean just looking out the window and admiring the scenery outside. Or it can be picking up a crossword puzzle, or it can be knitting something, or doodling, or watching a television show. Whatever engagement means to you, throw yourself into it fully. Engage fully in an activity. So those are my just quick tips at a blush, but I really do appreciate this resident bringing this forward. And by doing so, you have normalized it for so many other people who are feeling very similarly to you. So thank you for bringing that.
Thank you, Dr. Gibson. In listening to you address that and Barbara's answer to the last question, one of the things that we're hearing from residents, and I did want to touch on, is related to room changes. Barbara addressed that when there is a positive case, sometimes room changes have to happen. Traditionally, room changes are something that we, as a program, and DPH supports us in, that there's very few reasons why a resident's room should be changed. We understand that this is your home. This is an incredibly unique situation where, in order to provide the highest level of infection control measures, there are situations during this pandemic where, with very little notice, sometimes no notice at all, your room might have to be changed. I can't even imagine the impact of that. I like my surroundings a certain way. My children would tell you I'm extremely particular about where pillows are and how things sit, and I don't like people to touch my stuff. I would imagine that this is also, right, Jeanette? I would imagine that this could be very challenging for people. If someone came to my home right now and said, we need to move you, you're moving next door, and you have to live with your neighbor, and don't worry, we're not gonna take a lot of your stuff. She's got stuff. What? That would be incredibly hard. For some residents, you may have been moved multiple times over the past 6 months. I'm also not dealing with a physical disability where I may have my room set up a special way in order to best facilitate me to be independent, or as independent as possible. And emotionally, I will say that I have been challenged in this past 6 months. And when I come home, it is my safe space, right? I can take my mask off, I can relax, I'm comforted by my surroundings. If that was different, that would be challenging. So I wanted to acknowledge that. I wanted just to note how hard that can be, and that I think your care team members need to be very tuned into that. And as Dr. Gibson pointed out, talking about that, expressing to your care team if that is causing some anxiety for you. Maybe you're with a roommate that you're not used to, or you were very close to the roommate you were with. You may have even felt like you protected them or offered them supports. In some cases, one will speak for another and knows, little things about each other. Really discussing that and coming up with ways to still support each other, to stay connected to roommates that you've been with, and to find the opportunity to be back with the people you want to be with, I think comes through that communication, that care planning, talking to your support team, and that it's just really important to keep that conversation going.
Thank you, Mairead. So it's a little after noon and the questions keep rolling in. I don't know if we want to take a couple more or how you want to proceed.
I know I can stay on for a few more minutes. I'd like to check in with our panel. If not everyone can, we totally understand that. I want to take a moment to thank everyone for being here today. I also want to encourage people. I tried to switch the Facebook Lives to once a month last night. I did try. I did get quite a response, so they will continue to be weekly for now, and we've said that we will revisit that on the first Wednesday of every month. But I would also encourage people to attend that. When possible, the Department of Public Health has been gracious, as has DSS, in supporting us and being a part of those sessions, and we will invite DMIS whenever, if we hear from you all that that's something else that you think would be supportive. So if people do have to jump off to go to lunch, to go to other meetings, we understand that. Feel free to join our website. We have a Facebook page, and we do Facebook Live on Wednesdays at 5:30. But I'll stay on for a few more minutes, and if anyone else is able, or if anyone else needs to say goodbye, please take this opportunity.
I'm Jeanette. I'm going to say goodbye. I have a luncheon and therapy and then a visit today, so I'm like back to back. So this has been awesome. Thank you for allowing me to participate. And if there's anything else I can assist with, please let me know.
Thank you, Jeanette.
Have a great day.
You too.
I'm going to drop off as well, Mairead. I have a 12 o'clock Zoom. Thank you all. Stay well.
Thank you so much.
And I need to run too, Mairead. But thank you for having me.
Erin, thank you so much. And please thank your entire team for all of the support and everything they do to work with the residents and us.
I know there was a question. Can I ask a question really quick while I'm still here? It was from Lorene, and wondering if we go into a nursing home with our diversion nurse program, do the nurses need to be tested for COVID before entering?
So there isn't official guidance on that yet, but nursing homes all have their own. So I will say for my team, they're calling ahead to find out the status of the building. We are not currently going into buildings that are COVID positive.
Okay.
If there's any cases, and we will be testing before going in. Some homes do have it as part of their visitation plan that the person must show that they were tested within the past week.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
Great.
Bye, everybody.
Mairead, I will also have to get off. I'm so sorry, because I would love to continue the conversation, but I really appreciate this opportunity to be with all of you. I wish we could be in person, because I just know we'd have a wonderful time together, but this is the next best thing. And so thank you for letting me be a part of your important annual conference. I look forward to continue to work together.
Yes, and thank you so much for being here. And for our audience, I just want to let you know that we have done a contract with Dr. Sheri Gibson, and she's going to be working with our program and putting together a training for residents. We're working on a training for care team members and family members related to COVID and the trauma and a lot of what we talked about today. So we will be getting that out to you on our Facebook site, our website, and we're going to continue to have this conversation. So thank you so much for being with us today.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
All right, Mairead.
I will take a couple questions. See if I can answer them.
Stands. So I believe these will be quick, and I think they should be pretty straightforward. So one of the questions is about outdoor visits. So the resident doesn't feel comfortable with family coming inside, and the question is, will my administrator continue outdoor visits without monitors as long as the weather permits?
Well, as we said, visits should be person-centered. And so it shouldn't be about the administrator permitting it. It should be about your needs. And if you feel that it's comfortable to go outside and you can do that, you may ask to have assistance getting outside. I think that it is incredibly important to acknowledge the fact that CMS also said that outdoor visits are the safest visits because the air is free flowing and it's not in that containment. So whenever possible, they do recommend the outdoor visit. If you're able to do that in an independent way, if your family member is able, loved one, friend is able to sit at the 6-foot distance and you normally are outside independently, I don't see why that would be a challenge.
Okay, great. The next one is to do with compassionate care visits and indoor visits. And the question is, who should keep the schedule of compassionate and indoor visits? Who should be doing the documentation? Who should monitor and observe indoor visits?
Well, that's going to be individualized to the nursing home. And as a resident, I think it's perfectly appropriate to ask for your nursing home's visitation plan, so you know what to expect and to be fully informed. Depending on the size of the home, it may be done by one person, it may be done by several people. Recreation might have support from the nursing care team, or they may do it independently if they have a really large rec department. Social services might assist, or there may be rec techs, someone who's hired just to support that, or a temporary nurse aide. Any of those roles could fulfill that job and could help support you. The most important thing to us is that it's happening, that there's good documentation of it, that we know who is in the building is when, and that they were screened appropriately.
Thank you. Here's another question that came through. How can the facility get in touch with the doctor?
Well, facilities should always have direct contact with your physician. If it's your physician who oversees your care at the nursing home, they should be able to call them, fax them. Sometimes there's secure sort of information sharing through a portal on the computer. Any of those ways. If you would like to speak to your physician, I think it's also totally appropriate for you to make that request to your care nurse, your charge nurse, the social worker, or the nurse supervisor. Uh-oh, we're getting a visitor. He knows we've been on.
Finney says it's time to finish up. So the last question that's in the chat box has to do with compassionate care visits, and you may or may not be able to answer this. And but the question is, can a compassionate care visit be approved if there is no decline, but the residents are married?
Okay, so for compassionate care visits, you need to have the identified need. If you have a married couple that haven't seen each other, what is the need that's not being met? My understanding of compassionate care visits, and again, this is about having a conversation, identifying the need, maybe the need for privacy. They are going to really focus on infection control measures. They are asking that even for compassionate care visits, the 6-foot distance and physical spacing. So they'd want to identify what is the resident's need, what is the risk of that need not being met, and then how can a compassionate care visit supplement that need or benefit that resident so that they don't have a decline. That would be my expectation.
Great, thank you. So that is it for the questions. That was a wonderful Q&A section, and I'm sure so many people found it so helpful. Again, starting tomorrow, you will be able to view the Voices Forum live in its entirety with the Q&A piece on our website. There will be a YouTube link to view it, so please enjoy it, share it with others, and if you have any questions or comments, feel free to get in touch. We welcome your comments, and the link to the survey is also there. Please fill that out. It will be so helpful as we create future events to have your feedback.
And I want to thank you all so much, my incredible team members that worked just so hard to produce this today. We weren't sure how we were going to do it remotely. I'm incredibly thankful and proud of what they were able to put together today. Demas for being here, as well as Dr. Sheri Gibson and the Department of Public Health. Please stay well, stay safe, and join me on Wednesdays on the Facebook Live. Thank you.